Good morning. Welcome to Ex Witness Awake. My name is Jonathan. The following video you're about to see was taken last night, an interview that I did. There was some technical difficulties, unfortunately, so I had to be a little creative. So I hope that you will enjoy what I've done with it, and I will catch you later. Welcome to the channel. My name is Jonathan, otherwise known as Ex Witness Awake, and this is yet another edition of the Apostate Coalition. Today we are talking with Stationaryfork. So I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I am Stationaryfork, and I am 36. I am in the Midwest area, and I stream part time on Twitch, and I also used to be in the used to be Mormon.
Okay, so you're on the internet and you are an Ex Mormon. Very good.
Yep.
So how long have you been out now? Would you say?
I think going on 12 years.
Oh, okay. So definitely had nothing to do with COVID.
No,
I
no,
find there's
no.
a lot of apostates that are out due to COVID because their circumstances changed, the world changed for them. So um, they took advantage of that to get out of Dodge. So, were you someone who grew up as a Mormon?
No. So I grew up in a family that, well, my parents were Christian, but we never went to church. Um, I think that we were Methodist, but we never really went or anything. And then when I was 18, I got an internship to work for Walt Disney in Florida, and I was hired to do entertainment. I was one of the famous Disney princesses and a
Oh,
couple
that's cool.
other, yeah, a couple other characters. And they put you in housing when you're there. It's kind of like a dormitory apartment setup. And they put me with a group of Mormon girls, and they were really, really nice, and we were all working together. And so a lot of the Disney people, especially in entertainment, are actually from BYU.
Mm.
So they have a lot of them because they know that they don't party and they're going to be more reliable employees. And um, so they, and of course, a lot of them are in choir, and so they definitely go for the entertainment business. And so I ended up being friends with my roommates, and they were inviting me to all kinds of events. They have something going on every day of the week for the singles in the Mormon church. And so one night it would be, hey, we're all gonna go play soccer, and then the next night it was like, hey, we're all gonna make dinner together, and the next night we're all gonna watch a movie together. And so every night there's something going on, and I had moved down there by myself. I really didn't have any friends or family. And so, I was like, well, yeah, if I'm free, I'll come. And then that very shortly turned into, um, hey, have you ever met the missionaries? And they invited them over to our apartment one day, and everybody was making dinner. And, we've got like 10 different people in the apartment. And then the missionaries came over. And of course, they start talking to me, have you ever heard of the Book of Mormon? And I had only heard of certain parts of Mormonism with like the polygamy. And so of
Mhm.
course that was my first question. They were like, no, 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 that has nothing to do with us. That's a totally different part of the church. They branched away. We don't have anything to do with them. Because I was kind of like, I don't want to do that. And then they
I
started
don't blame you.
talking. Yeah. They started talking to me about, all these different stories. And um it was kind of weird because part of it was almost like they want you to feel bad about yourself, that because you're not in their church and you might be doing things that they don't agree with,
Mhm.
that you should really feel guilty about that. And so, you know, I was 18, 19 at the time, and I really wasn't, a big party or anything, but, just the fact that, I would go out sometimes, they kind of would put a little bit of like, well, Heavenly Father doesn't really, want that kind of a lifestyle for us because it's not God, it's your Heavenly Father. And
Mm.
so that you're trying to impress your dad, basically. You want your dad to be proud of you. And they just, all would kind of put this a little bit of a guilt trip on you. And so then you kind of start to believe it and you kind of start to think like, oh man, you know, I'm not living my life the way I should be. And I love coffee and that was like the first thing that they were telling me. They're like, "Oh,
Uh,
do you have any idea what you're putting into your body?" And I'm like, "Caffeine, stuff that tastes good. I don't know. It's coffee." And they would really, because they really dislike coffee in that church. And then, I started having questions about stuff, and then so I would ask questions, and they were always so, sincere with their answers. Or at least I thought they were sincere. They were very kind, and they would, try to explain things. But looking back, the way that they were explaining things, it was talking in a giant circle. So they made you kind of feel more like they cared about you. And instead of, if I asked them a straight question, I would get a 30-minute talk about something that would turn into a tangent that had nothing to do with my question. But the
mm,
way that they would do it is, they would just make you feel like you were talking to a friend and you were talking to somebody that cared about you. And they would make you feel so like warm and welcome after they talked to you that you kind of forgot what your question was. And you just kind of started to kind of like, for me, I really just liked the fact that it felt like I had friends and I had a place where I could actually, not be alone when I was in this new city. And it was It was very much where they really, really wanna make you feel invited and make you feel like you are the only person in the room. And so I was constantly getting text messages and calls every day from them just, "Hey, what are you doing? How are you? How's work going?" And I didn't have that from anyone else, so I really started to kind of buy into it. And then, they started, asking me if I wanted to start doing the classes with the missionaries. And they would bring over their Book of Mormon and everyone would sit around and they just made you feel like you were so special and so important. They were just wanted to share this with you.
mhm.
And eventually I just started to buy it. And even the things that they would say to me that like I knew deep inside that it didn't make sense to me. Like the whole story with Joseph Smith, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And how they would tell you, like, Jesus was in America. And I'm like, when? And they just,
I've
I'm
never
like,
heard
"Oh,
that before.
oh yeah," they told me that, that Jesus had come to America and all these different stories, and eventually the way that they would just keep going in circles and just keep changing the subject over and over and over again, you kind of would get lost in what they were telling you.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, it was almost like a clickbait where they would kind of you would start out thinking it was something, and then an hour later, you've heard all kinds of things and basically told how, you know, they really wanna hang out with you again, and everybody just really likes you. And so then, hanging out with all my friends, and then I kind of wanted like, I felt like, I wanted to be a part of this group because I had become close to everyone. And, I felt like, I had a family outside of my family. And so I decided that I was going to, convert. And so they were all so excited, and we had a baptism, and everyone was there, and everybody was just so excited for it. And they, it was like this big dinner and everything, but it was it was weird because they made you feel like, you were like this guest of honor at your own baptism. And then I got baptized and they tell you, you are now clean. You have been absolved of all of your previous sins. Your life starts over today. And then within a few days, I stopped hearing from people. And it was
Yeah.
kind of like, all right, mission accomplished. Let's go find the next shiny new toy to build up and do the exact same thing with. And so I started getting invites to teach new people. They were like, well, now that you're a member, you need to be, we need to keep spreading the gospel and keep spreading the word. And so here's this person that we've become friends with. And you felt very thrown aside
Mhm.
after. And because I wasn't raised in the church, it was kind of like there were 2 groups of people in that, where you had some that were still, the fact that you had been baptized, they accepted you as one of their own. And then there was the other group that was raised in the church and they had, lived this life that, had been taught to them, and they still judged you because even though you were converted over, you were still unworthy and you were still unholy and you were still unclean to them. And so the church did a lot of kind of matchmaking where they would hold singles nights. We had dances and we would have like all these events at the church, and it was
Hmm.
for singles to meet. And they were constantly trying to like pair people up. And there were a lot of people that thought I shouldn't be there because I was a convert, and so I had experienced parts of life that because maybe they hadn't or it's, frowned upon, um, that I started to feel very different going to events. I started to feel very on the outside. There were still, some of the people that I had originally been friends with were still nice to me, but there were a lot of other people there that I was meeting that they did treat you very differently. And so, um, they would kind of try to like introduce you. They would try to introduce me to different guys in the church. And there was always this pressure to date and get married as soon as possible. And they would actually have counseling for girls over the age of 19. So on Tuesday nights, they would do Bible study and then it split into groups. They had the men's group and the women's group. And they would really pressure girls that if you were over the age of 19, you really needed to look at yourself and see what were you doing wrong in your life that you weren't already a perfect wife to someone.
Wow.
And yeah, it was horrible.
That's a pretty high standard to have at such an early age.
Yeah, and a lot of them they would tell me that, the whole point of going to BYU is your freshman year as a girl, you're supposed to find the guy you're going to marry. And if you are not married at a young age, then they had me going to counseling because they wanted to work with me, and there were other girls, there were about 20 of us in that group. And they would sit down and they would have, they would do one-on-ones with you, but they'd also do group activities with you where they would discuss things like, well, what does Heavenly Father want you to be as the perfect wife? And what are your goals to serve Heavenly Father if you're not serving a husband? And it was tremendous pressure. And at 19, I had absolutely no interest in getting married. I was 19. I was finally out on my own and I didn't want to just get married. And
They're like, now I start life, right?
yeah, and then a lot of times, some of the girls would be very, very, like, judgmental towards you when they found out you were a convert, and they would, ask you questions about things like, "Oh, have you ever done this? Have you ever done this?" And then instantly, you were just pushed aside,
Hmm.
like, "Oh, no, it doesn't matter that you were baptized. You lived a life of sin, and you're still not worthy." And then I had a couple of guys that would ask me out, and I would kinda go out with them, but I really just never felt any connection. Um, we would have a nice time, but it was like within maybe a date or 2 dates, they're asking, "So
Oh,
what do you think
hello.
marriage.
The Wi-Fi is not cooperating, so I'm going to data now.
Oh,
Good thing I
it's
have
like
lots of data.
I was like, well, hopefully my story's not so boring. I'm killing your computer.
Like, oh no, no, you're doing just fine.
So let's see. Trying to remember the last part I was talking about. So they would do they would have the dating. Okay, so yeah, I would go on dates and then the guys would kind of talk about marriage right away and what are your plans for marriage and how soon do you see yourself getting married and when do you want to have kids? And I was like, not anytime soon.
Hold your
And
horses, buddy.
yeah, like I literally just learned your name a week ago and then I just wouldn't hear from them. And then they would be dating another girl like the very next day and then 2 months later they were engaged and it was just that fast constantly. And I don't know if part of it is that they want to start families but also, the whole abstinence thing.
Yeah.
They really want to get married just for that. And it was weird for me. And then a lot of times too, people, the guys, as soon as they found out that I was, a convert, instantly they were like, "Oh, no. You've done stuff I haven't done, so I'm just gonna press skip on you," which probably was a good thing.
That's not really giving you a fair shake, though.
No.
But
No.
yeah, you're right. If they're willing to do that, then maybe it was for the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very glad actually that I did not marry one of those guys because I would be stuck in the church right now with kids and I don't necessarily know how my life would be, but I don't think it would be what I wanted it.
Yeah. So I was thinking about the things that you've said so far, and I can see a lot of similarities to experiences that Jehovah's Witnesses have.
Yeah.
So when you um, first got associated with them, um, you're basically kind of stuck in a room with a bunch of people trying to convert you. So
Yep.
and then they took advantage of the fact that you didn't have a big support system, you didn't have a lot of friends in the area, and they what's the word I'm looking for? They love bombed you, and
Yes.
that's something that's very common with Jehovah's Witnesses. So if someone will come to the Kingdom Hall and suddenly like you're the best thing ever, and they're so happy to see you, but once that initial period of trying to pull you in has been accomplished, then it's like, well, we don't need to do that. It's too much emotional work for them, I guess. And then you're just
Mhm.
nothing special. So that
Yep.
seems to be very common, with these type of groups. And
Yeah.
also the thing about, trying to get you married ASAP and, abstinence and that sort of thing. So people are young and they're trying to not get in trouble, so they will go for the first thing they can get, and later in life they find that it was a bad choice. So
Yeah. There were some of them where they didn't even have their first kiss until their wedding day.
forget that.
And yeah, I don't think that when I had my first kiss, it was all that great. And I can't imagine experiencing that on my wedding day.
You kissed like a dead fish. Now we're married. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just very strange things. And then, yeah, so one of the big things that I always struggled with and never could get an answer for was why you're not allowed to have coffee. You're not allowed to have they tell you it's hot drinks. So coffee, teas, anything that has, any caffeine in it. They do drink pop, but it's like diet and caffeine
Mm.
free. But yeah, I always ask them like, so what is it against this? Like, why is everyone so against coffee? And they just told me, well, because it's unnatural. It's not something that's naturally in your body. You don't need caffeine. It's a stimulant and you're changing your body. And Heavenly Father made us a certain way. And you just need to get more sleep at night or, you need to be doing other things with your diet or your lifestyle. But having caffeine, that's something you're adding that's not a natural part of your body. Was the only answer. And the only other thing I could think of is it's just a way of control, that if they can get you to agree to not have coffee, then they can get you to agree to much bigger things.
Now, I don't know a whole lot about it, but from what I've seen on TikTok and different things, it had something to do with Joseph Smith and his having to basically not having alcohol, and he sort of threw in hot coffee and stuff as kind of a snub on one of his wives. Like, if I can't have alcohol, you're not having coffee, you're not having tea.
I mean,
So
that
I
could
don't know if
very
that's
well
true or
be.
not, but it sounds like somebody who is controlling a group of people. It sounds like something that they would do.
Yeah,
It's sort of
exactly.
a narcissistic, control mechanism.
Yeah, and oh yeah, definitely no alcohol, no smoking. Um, I actually, so when I worked at Disney, we would do, if you got cast in the holidays, like holiday parade or show, it was an extreme, like almost 6-month commitment. And you were working during the day, rehearsing at night. I was also going to school full time while I was working there. And so, there were nights where I didn't get much sleep. And a lot of the people that would help work on backstage, there would be tons of coffee that they would have. Like, they had French presses and they had like the good stuff. And I was not going to miss out. It was cold in the wintertime. When you're rehearsing at a parade at 1 o'clock in the morning, even, in November, it does get cold. And so, I would drink it, and one of the girls that went to church with me saw me and reported me at church. And so when they passed the sacrament around, which is a little tiny thimble cup of water and some torn up bread, is the sacrament. And the reason that they do water is because the way they explained it to me, because I asked them why water, and they said it's because we take a shower to clean the dirt off of our skin. And so when you're drinking sacrament, when you take the sacrament and you're drinking water, you're cleansing yourself on the inside.
That
'Cause
sounds weird.
it is weird. It is. That was their explanation to me. And I was like, so I'm drinking
Hmm.
bath water? What am I doing here?
That sounds like a loophole. Like, we can't drink alcohol. Most other places would do the wine. So how do we get
Or
around that? We'll
juice,
just do
yeah.
water.
They wouldn't even do juice, and I've been to churches where it was just grape juice. But
Hmm.
yeah, it was just water because you're cleansing yourself from the inside. And then I was like, "So what's with, like, the torn up pieces of bread then?" Like, it's not even a cracker, it's
Body
not.
of Christ.
Yeah, yeah. Just tear it up and
Just
pass it
some Wonder
around.
Bread.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was odd. And then so she had reported me for drinking coffee, and so when they came around with the sacrament, they were told to skip me. And I was like, "Okay, what did I do?" And later on I was pulled aside and asked, "So, when we've made a lot of things, clear here, and we were told that you were drinking coffee." And I was like, "Yeah, I was." And they were like, "Well, until you repent for that, you can't take the sacrament." And I just thought that was the weirdest thing to me. Like, really? I can't. You think you can control every aspect of my life? And that's exactly what they think. And it was
mhm.
that was like the first moment where I was like, I think I made a mistake. And then um, working for Disney, I had a lot of friends that were in the LGBTQ community. I mean, a lot of them. And I even fall into a part of that myself. And so I had a lot of friends and I hung out with them, and, they were great people. And a couple people found out that I was hanging out with some friends, and we had all just gone out dancing one night. Wasn't drinking or anything. They would have they called them cast nights when Pleasure Island still had clubs. And so you could get in for free. And we would just go and dance and have a good time. And a lot of it was right after we'd done a show or a parade, and it was just our group. And we would have fun and then go home. And some people had found out that I was hanging out with them, and they pulled me aside for that. And they were like, "We heard that you're hanging out with gay people." And I was like, "Well, yeah." And they were like, "Well, you can be nice to them, but you cannot be friends with them, and you cannot be spending time with them." And I was just completely taken aback by that statement. And I was like, "Well, why?" And they're like, "Because they are just living a complete life of sin, and they are not going to get into heaven." And I was like, "Okay, so you're telling me that because somebody does something you don't agree with, you are going to decide what happens to them in the end?" And I just thought it was such a backwards way of talking, because one of the things that they teach you is not to judge. You're not supposed to be judgmental, and you're supposed to love thy neighbor. But then they're turning around, they're like, "Well, as long as they're not gay." And I was just like, that is not what I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And that really upset me, because I was like, some of these people are the best people I've ever met. And you're going to sit here and tell me I can't be friends with somebody that's an actual friend and an actual good person and has never done anything wrong to me just because you don't agree? And they wanted me to go to counseling, with like a one-on-one counseling with the they call him, well, for the leader of ours, he was called a president. They wanted me and the president to sit down and do one-on-one counselings each week, because I needed to apparently have a much deeper discussion and really search my soul and find out why the church was so against this.
Hmm.
And I refused, and they were not happy with me. And then another big one was the tithings. They want you to give 10% of your pay to the church every Sunday. And I was going to school full time. I was working. I was paying for everything myself. And there were times where it was like, well, I can give, I had $20 left of my paycheck to survive on for a week. And I was like, and you want me to give even more of that to the church? When I'd been to the president's house, it was a multi-million-dollar home with an endless pool in the backyard that the temple itself reflected out of at night. You could see the temple glowing, the reflection in their endless pool. And he drove a Mercedes. His wife had a BMW, and they would invite us over there for meals. And they had a full movie theater in their basement. We would watch movies down there. And I was like, I really feel like the church is okay. You don't need, another $2 from me when I only have $20 for the week. And they wanted me to choose between if I was going to eat that day or if I was going to pay my tithing to the church and give my money to God. And if you couldn't pay your tithing, you were unworthy and you could not partake in sacrament, and people would look down on you, because anytime everybody was always paying attention, who's not taking sacrament this week? What did they do? And it
Okay.
was just, yeah, it was horrible. And it just used to really bother me that I was, doing all these things, and it was never good enough. And I was never enough. And I remember going to the temple, like, with some people, like, we went and checked it out, and I had asked about going inside, and they were like, "Well, you can't go inside." And I was like, "Well, why can't I go inside?" And they're like, "Well, it's a lot harder for women than it is for men, and you have to be invited. The church, like, the president has to actually, you have to be given an invitation to go inside the temple." So I have no idea what it looks like inside,
So
because
it's a
I was
special club,
never.
basically.
Yeah, and I was never, ever worthy. And then I found out later on that like 90% of the women have not been inside. You can go into one part of it when you get married, and that's when you get your, they call it your magic underwear. When
Yeah,
you
I've heard
get,
about those.
yeah, the garments. Yeah, so when you get your garments and everything, and you've done your whole marriage, then if you are a high enough paying member, like if you pay really good tithings and you're more of the higher up part of the church, then women can go inside, but there's still areas that are only for men. And it was very misogynistic. And I was like, so because I'm a female, I'm not worthy. And because I don't pay enough money, I'll never be worthy. And it just blew my mind when I would see just what that money went to. You know, it went to them having beautiful homes and expensive cars and never having to worry about food or putting gas in their car. And here I was sometimes taking the bus because I couldn't afford to put the gas in my car, and I was working, and I just always thought, like, what a hypocritical statement for them to have.
God did not need that money.
No.
Just take a smaller paycheck there, leader.
Yeah, exactly. And it was all, I mean, it's always paid for by the church. So that's where your tithings were going. And yeah, and then, you know, for him to turn around and be like, well, make sure you're paying your tithings. It's very important. I'm like, well, I'm sure it is
It's very
for
important to people
you.
receiving the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like all these things just really started to kind of like, what did I do? You know, I'd been so blinded by how, you know, in the beginning when everybody was really just so different, when everyone just wanted me around and they were all, you know, just really pulling me in with their friendship. And then later on, it all just kind of turned around and I saw what it really was. And I was just like, oh, I can't do this.
So how long would you say it was from the time that you got involved with them to the time that you just like, I'm out?
It was about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah, just little things that started kind of making me pull away a little bit. And then the only time they really pay attention is when you start pulling away, when they
Yeah.
notice that you're not coming to all the events anymore, because they have an event every single night. Every single night there's something for the singles to keep you under their control, basically, keep you around the same people. They can keep an eye on you. They can make sure that you're not out. If you're not there, what are you doing?
Right.
And it got to where there were times that I had to work on Sunday, and all of them would take Sundays off because you're not supposed to work on Sunday. And I would work on Sundays because I was going to school. And so Sundays was one of my big work days. And they would tell me, well, how badly do you actually need money? Like, well, pretty bad if I can't pay tithings. I mean, you're telling me you want money from me,
Yeah. Wait a minute.
but you don't want me to work. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was ridiculous. And then I had gotten home one day from work, and it was like 10 minutes before church. And one of my roommates had rushed back home. She had forgotten something, rushed back home, and just happened to catch me. And I was exhausted, and I wanted to take a shower and finally go to bed because I think I had been at work that whole night with a rehearsal, and then I had to do a breakfast, um a character breakfast that morning. And so I'd been up all night and I just wanted to take a shower and go to bed. And she was like, oh, you're home. You can go to church. And I was like, I'm gross and I would like to take a shower. And she was like, well, nobody's going to care. And I was like, first off, that's a lie because they pay attention to what you wear at church. And if girls aren't wearing skirts and wearing, you know, you have to dress really nicely and they judge you instantly if you don't. You never see anybody in jeans. And so I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And she
Plus,
got,
you cared. You're
yeah,
somebody.
yeah. And so she instantly got so mad that I was not going to go to church. And she was like, well, you can just throw something on. And I was like, but I don't want to. I
Yeah.
don't I don't want to. I don't see why it's a bad thing that I'm going to skip today. And it was a bad thing. And I heard about it for a solid week. Where were you Sunday? Were you sick? And I was like, no. They're like, well, you needed to come. We don't care what you look like. We just wanted you to be there.
Mm.
And I instantly
Because
knew
that's
that,
control.
yeah. And I instantly knew that was a lie because I knew if I had shown up the way that I had looked, they would have all been talking about that.
Oh yeah, if you showed up in pajama bottoms and ratty hair and stuff, and
Yeah.
that would be you'd never live that down. You'd hear about that forever.
Yep. I mean, there were girls that had come in there and they didn't have their hair done and they didn't have makeup one day, and everyone was talking about it later, like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what she looked like? Doesn't she care?" And I'm like, "Maybe she just doesn't care about doing her hair every Sunday." I know I don't. It was just very judgmental and very backwards and very hypocritical.
There seems to be a lot of that in these groups.
Yes.
Judgment and hypocrisy.
Yep. And they try to make you eventually you feel like it's your fault. But they wouldn't be acting that way if you were doing better, if you were serving harder, if you were really dedicating yourself to the gospel, and if you were out, talking to non-members and telling them about the Book of Mormon and inviting them to all these things, and if you were paying your tithings like they were, and then you would fit right in. But even when I would try to do those things, and even, it didn't matter. I was still a convert, and I was still last week's toy, and this
Hmm.
week they had someone new.
See, that feels so wrong, because if somebody was born in, it's easy because that's what they learned from infancy, basically, how to live that way. And it's just sort of the natural progression of things, is you're going to follow your parents' religion, because at 5, it's not like, I think I'm going to look into Buddhism. It, that's just what you do, right?
Yeah.
And you came out of, the world and joined. So you made a definite decision about what you wanted to do at the time, even though, in hindsight, you're like, that was the wrong decision. But you still decided, okay, I like this, I'm going to try this. And here they're treating you like you're substandard.
Yeah. Because I wasn't born in it, I wasn't raised in it, and, I'd had alcohol before I joined, and
Oh no.
I know, and I'd had premarital sex in my life,
Oh
and
no.
so all those things, they really it was almost like part of that was that they judged you for it, and then the other part of it was almost like the guys kind of treated you like you might have more experience, and so you might be disappointed with them.
Mm.
And the
So they felt
girls,
ill-equipped, basically.
yeah, kind of, because
Probably a little jealous too. Like, secretly, they probably like, that would be fun to try, but I can't do that, and you got to do it. That's not fair.
yeah, and the girls kind of treated you like, very, very judgmental, like, even though you couldn't really control what had happened before, they, at the time of your baptism, that's supposed to wipe your slate clean. You're supposed to be starting from that day on, but they didn't want you to forget that you weren't actually clean, that you
Mhm.
weren't actually free of all these things.
So it felt like they were always trying to put you in your place, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I mean, I lived in Orlando, Florida. It gets hot there. So I would go down to our pool, and if I had a bikini on and not like a 1950s swimsuit, because they were big in the tankinis because it covered the most.
Uh,
And if I didn't have one of those on, they were extremely like, because you're not supposed to show your body, and you're not even supposed to wear a tank top. You're supposed to always have at least a t-shirt or a cap sleeve on at all times, because you're supposed to be extremely modest. You're not supposed to have anything that goes like below your like neck, like your collarbone.
mhm.
Um, you're always supposed to have stuff that's longer, because then when you put your garments on, they're covered, because no one's ever supposed to see your garments.
Wait, is that to say that people who have garments even have them at the beach?
There were actually quite a few of the guys, because they get them when they go on their mission, that were
Huh.
wearing them under their swim trunks, and they would wear a t-shirt or a tank top on over their garments at the
That
beach.
seems weird. That's like wearing long johns all the time.
It was so weird. And then, yeah, some of the girls too, they wouldn't even wear a swimsuit if we would go to the beach or go out, like, to one of the water parks. They would have on shorts and they would have on a t-shirt, because they had their garments underneath and they couldn't show them. It was almost like being Amish.
So, you're kind of at a point now where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, basically. How did you pull the trigger on that situation? Because you're not there anymore. You did
No.
something.
Well, they kept trying to push the counseling on me, and they tried to push it on me. I ended up, when I left Orlando, I ended up moving to Atlanta, Georgia. I had a job working at CNN, and I had some friends in Atlanta that I had met in Orlando. And so they, started bringing me to the church and everything. And it was a little bit different going from Orlando, where it was like a lot of strict BYU students, going to, it was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more like the people there actually lived there in Atlanta. But again, it was just kind of dealing with the same things. If I was hanging out with people that, you know, they didn't agree with, like, if I had any gay friends, then, it just kind of started all over. And I just noticed right away again, that it was just kind of the same mindset. And they really pushed the singles nights there. And I stopped going because I just felt awkward, and I didn't want to keep doing all these speed dating events with people that I had no interest in marrying. And they noticed that I wasn't coming to a lot of stuff, or if I had to work and I couldn't go to like one of their, just group hangouts, um, they would notice who was and wasn't there. And so they wanted to talk to me again. And I just told them, I was like, this is ridiculous. This is not what I thought I joined. And, you know, I feel like your teachings are they're extremely hypocritical, but I was like, I feel like you contradict yourselves with a lot of things. And so they told me either I could start doing counseling with the elders and try and get to the root of things to see how I could open my heart more to Jesus and become a better Mormon, or they were going to ask me to leave, and I chose to leave.
Good for you.
And yeah, and a lot of them reached out to me afterwards, and they tried to talk to me and tried to tell me how they were terrified for my soul. They were so worried about me. That, if I just wanted to come and talk, and, if I needed to talk to the missionaries again. And I just stopped answering phone calls after a while. And it was weird because after I left, I stopped hearing from probably 90% of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple left that I even have kept in contact with, and one of them recently left the church, and I was the first one to tell him how proud I was. Like, him and his wife finally have left, and he had to stay off social media for quite a while, actually, when he decided to leave, made the announcement, and got about the same reaction I did. And then I have been able to DM with him a little bit and just, kind of talked about like, well, what made you leave and what were the things you questioned? And it was a lot of the same stuff, just a lot of hypocrisy and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of just asking a question that you never get an answer to, but you get a circular answer about 10 things that you didn't even ask about.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just that fear that, oh, well, now that you're out, your soul isn't safe anymore. And I'm like, well, I think I'll worry about my own soul. Thanks.
I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, maybe South Park got it right and it is the Mormons, but who knows?
Well, I see that there's a lot of similarities because you're talking about 90% of your friends just kind of disappeared and that. So that's shunning just unofficially, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's official shunning. So it's a little more concrete, but it's still a similar outcome.
Yeah.
People that you thought you trusted and you thought, had your back and, would be supportive, are suddenly like, nah, I don't know you.
Yep, because now you are what they are trying to, I guess you're one of the bad guys now.
Hmm.
And yeah, as soon as you question the doctrine and you decide like I don't believe in this and this isn't for me, then they can't have you around because you might get other people to question those things. You get other people to ask that same question like, is this real? And
Yeah.
they don't want you to infect others. And so they'll try to pull you back in for a little while, but then when they realize it's not going to happen, then yeah, they want you as far away from them as possible because you're just going to infect others.
You're bad association.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. So I like to ask, well, I've only done 2 of these interviews. This is the second one. So I say I like to ask this question to people. So if you could go back in time and tell yourself, your younger self, something, what would it be?
You can be friends with these people, or you can be nice to these people, but do not be friends with them.
Be careful. Huh?
I would
Yeah.
just turn right around what they told me. I mean,
Yeah.
I would probably have still, I mean, I still would have worked with them, obviously, and I still would have had my roommates, but I probably would never have joined. I didn't have like I know a lot of people have really traumatic experiences, and I'm lucky, I guess, in the fact that mine isn't really that traumatic. Um, I do have a lot of trust issues now. I always see red flags and things. The second I see some kind of a behavior in someone where they act, extremely like where they really try to pull you into something, and then I see like instantly I assume like, well, what's in it for them?
Mhm.
Like just the way that the church treated me, I see that a lot now in other aspects of my life, and I feel like I probably wouldn't feel that way or see things that way if I hadn't been in that church for so long. Like it really just kind of has made me assume there were red flags and everything and kind of have an antitrust now that I never had before. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not a great thing either to have that, and I know that's where it came from.
I guess caution's good, but paranoia is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're kind of thinking, this person's being nice to me. What do they really want? What's their motive?
Yep.
Are they just being nice, or are they trying to get something out of you?
Yep. And I
And you're
dealt
kind
with that for so long, and because they keep you very sheltered and you're only supposed to hang out with the Mormon church and you're only supposed to hang out with that group of people and and then there were a lot of times where I did question like what is wrong with me? Why don't I fit in? Why don't I want these things? Why don't I want to be married at 19? Like, it just kind of made me wonder like what was wrong with me. And that actually did take a while to get past even after I left, where I just kind of thought like, did I miss a chance? Like, you know, was was I missing out on something just because I wasn't raised that way? But I later on I realized that no, I would not have been happy had I decided to stay and actually really try and do, if I had tried to do their counseling, I feel like that would have caused more harm than good. Because a lot of the stuff that they wanted me to go against, I mean, I have friends and family that I would have cut out because of that. And
yeah.
I could never like imagine my life doing that and losing people that I care about just because a church doesn't agree.
Yeah, the whole concept of shunning doesn't sit well with me. Not just because I'm experiencing it, but on the level of anybody. I don't understand how you can be okay and then you're not, and then you can be close and then they're just nothing to you. It doesn't really fit with me.
Yeah.
And also the judging you're talking about. You got a lot of friends who are part of the LGBTQ community. When I was growing up, I was taught that you don't hate the person, but you hate the choices that they make and the way that they live and that sort of thing. But it's all just sort of it's a judgment without any sort of real input. There's no, if you get take the chance to actually get to know people, you find out that there's nothing wrong with them. They're you. It's just judgment for the sake of judgment, for control.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them, I mean, they were just my friends. We cared about each other and we worked together and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot in common and we would just hang out and go do stuff together. And they didn't want anything in return. But anytime I hung out on a church activity, there was always that ulterior motive as to why I was there. And especially before I joined, I mean, their whole entire motive was to get me to convert and to join their church. And none of my other friends had that. They just wanted to hang out. And
Yeah.
so to me, it was really eye-opening, I guess, that, here they were telling me you can't be friends with these people, and here they were judging people that were just an honest friend, and here they were telling me I needed to be more involved and, hang out with them, but they all had a motive.
Yeah.
And I just thought how backwards that was when I looked back on it. Especially, I mean, some of the stuff I was just like right away, I was like, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. This isn't what nobody had told me any of these things before. And so then afterwards I was just like, no, this was not the right choice for me. I should not have done this. But I was able to get out without any major repercussions. I mean, just, a lot of friends that I never talked to again, but they weren't really my friends if they were never going to talk to me again just because I'm not a
That's
member.
the thing. Yeah. So since you came in as a single person, you don't have any family members that were involved with the church?
Nope.
So you really don't even have anything to worry about that way. So that's good.
No, my family was really worried about me. They
They're
were,
probably like, whoo!
yeah, they were terrified. They were like, "Oh no, she's joined a cult. We've lost her." Um, they did notice some changes in me for the first couple of years that I started, acting differently, talking differently. Very like, I wasn't ever like wild or anything, but I was stubborn and I always kind of had my own path. And then they noticed that I completely lost that and I wasn't who I used to be at all. And I was just blindly following what I was being told. And, you
Mhm.
know, and they were extremely worried. And when I finally left, they were like, "Oh my God, we we never thought you were gonna get out." And yeah, they were very happy when I told them that I had left. And like when I was down in Florida, like my mom had come to visit me and my dad and my brother had come to visit. Um, and so I mean they had instantly, met my roommates and met all my Mormon friends and we all had gone out and stuff. My mom was like, "Well, some of them they were really nice. They were very polite." And she's like, "And some of them they seemed really nice." And she's like, "But she's like, you just some of the other ones," she's like, I wasn't a fan of because I had the one roommate of mine, she was extremely like hardcore and like she never liked me because I was a convert. And so she would get some of the others around that had like they would all get together, the ones that had been like raised in the church and their parents had been raised in the church, and they would go do their own things. And she would even tell me, like, "Oh, we're all gonna go out and do this weekend." And I was like, "Oh, cool." She's like, "No, you're not invited." And I was like, "Oh, so it's like that." I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
but when it's time to pay your rent, I'm sure you'll be really nice to me.
Yeah.
Like, you'll take my money, but I'm not good enough to hang out with." And it was like, yeah, it was this very select group that all of them treated me that way, and they treated all the converts that way. And I remember there's a girl that was getting married, and everybody got invited to a reception. I didn't even know her, but because we went to the church, we were all invited to the reception. And her husband, she had gotten him to convert so they could get married because she wasn't going to leave the church, but she had convinced him to join. And I remember like a lot of them, the stuff that they had said and everything, like even at their wedding. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're going to put people down at their own wedding just because he's a convert, like, and he had done stuff before he met her. Like, that's how it usually goes in society. Usually people have experiences and you don't always have the same experiences as your partner, but you experience things to get together later.
Right.
But yeah, to judge people and put people down for that, I always had such a huge problem with it.
And everybody's got a history.
Exactly. Why, and they want you to forget it. They want you to forget your past and wipe it clean, but then they always are the ones to bring it up and they're always the ones to judge you for it. And that's why, like, a lot of the guilt, they really, really guilt you. And that kind of put a lot of pressure on me to try harder, because instead of being like, why am I feeling bad about myself right now? It was like, oh my gosh, I'm letting them down. All my friends are so disappointed in me, and all these people are so disappointed in me, and I don't want them to look at me like that. So it was always just one or the other. You were either, if you were doing okay, nobody paid attention to you. But then every once in a while, they would just kind of bring stuff up in a very judgmental way. And it was just like, it was awful.
Sounds like life is much better for you now.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly happy now. I don't belong to any religion. I've studied a lot of them, but I don't belong to any religion now. I got married to somebody who didn't judge me for my past. And he makes fun of me sometimes for being a Mormon. But it's fine. And I mean, I have a house and I have a job, and we have a normal, happy life. And according to all of them, I never would have had that. Like, I shouldn't have any of this because I'm not in the church and God is not blessing my life.
That feels familiar because we were always taught that the world is a terrible place, and that if you leave the organization, you're just going to be miserable and everything's going to go wrong. And I just saw a video that they put out a few years ago that that's just a scenario where they decided they just want to get out of the house. They got this job and they moved in with a friend who was kind of shady. And one thing after another happened, and he just ended up sleeping with somebody, and he wrecked his car. And it was very emotional and dramatic, and he's out in the rain and screaming, "Oh, forgive me, Jehovah." And he goes back, and it's a prodigal son situation. So that's the things that they're always going to portray, and it's always going to be terrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be terrible. You don't need to be in the organization to have a good, healthy, enjoyable life that you're satisfied with.
Yeah, they do kind of have that fear aspect that if you're not living your life to the church standards, if you're not dedicating everything to your heavenly Father and following the teachings in the Book of Mormon, and like, they do have that kind of fear factor in that if you're not doing those things, your life is doomed. There's no possible way that you could ever have a happy life or a normal life or do anything if you leave the church, because you're going to be punished and your soul is not going to be saved and you're not going to have the blessings that they have. And it's garbage. I mean, it's complete garbage. People have more control over their own lives than that. People can decide for themselves what kind of, if they want to work towards a good life or not. And I feel like when I was in the church, I was broke and I was working a lot, and I didn't have anything. I mean, pretty much everything I owned fit in my car. And leaving the church, I was able to build a life for myself. So it's almost kind of like me telling them, like, look what I could do.
It's what you got to do. It's like, check this out. I'm happy.
Exactly.
It's like the carrot and the stick. They try to get you in with love and blessings and stuff, and if that doesn't work, then they use the stick. You're going to go to hell or you're going to die at Armageddon or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like that again goes to the whole that's how they have power over you. That's how they get their control over you. And that's why, I don't even like to call it a church. Like, just calling that a church just bothers me. I call it either an institution if I'm being polite. And if I'm talking to other people, I'm like, it's a cult. I mean, it's a complete mindset. It's a hive mind with them. And, they don't like individuality in there, and they don't like anything different. They like everyone following the same doctrine, and a lot of stuff that's happened in the past too. I mean, they try and pretend like certain things never happened. And I was like, I learned about stuff in history class, and I know I remember there's like a story where there was like some mass genocide that had happened, and they were like, "Oh, no, 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 that wasn't true." And I was like, "Okay, well, I learned about it like from a history book in class." And they were like, "Well, no, that wasn't really what happened. That's just what was said. That's not actually true." And I'm like, "Okay, but a talking chameleon talked to your prophet and told him where some golden templates were that nobody's ever been able to find again, and that's true." That's believable.
That leads me to another question. What was one thing about Jehovah's Witnesses that you always thought was kind of weird? I didn't know much about the LDS Church, but I had heard about the whole golden plates thing, and I thought that was really weird.
Yeah, yeah. Like the whole story with him, I think Joseph Smith was 14 at the time, and an angel came and talked to him in his sleep and told him that there were these golden templates that had God's true word written on them. Told him where to find them. There's a couple versions of the story. There's also one where he was out in the woods and a lizard appeared and told him. And so, yeah, where the lizard comes and tells him he saw a talking lizard and it told him about these plates, and it was a vision. And so,
Sounds like they left out the part where he had those special mushrooms he found behind the barn.
yeah, yeah. So apparently he went out to this area, dug them up, and as he was looking at them, he just had this photographic memory and he just memorized what was on them because he doesn't take them with him. He puts them back. And then he goes and he runs and he tells everybody, like, "Oh, I found these golden templates with God's true word." And they're like, "Where are they?" And he's like, "Well, I put them back." And takes them out there and they're just magically gone. But because he remembered what was written on there, he was able to spend a couple of years transcribing it into the Book of Mormon. And I was just like, uh-huh, sure he did. But yeah, when it came to the Jehovah's Witnesses, though, like I had a friend in school, um, that he was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and it was because his mom's boyfriend was, and so they didn't celebrate any holidays or birthdays. When we would have holiday parties in school, he wasn't at school that day. He never got to come for birthday parties. He never obviously celebrated his own, but even when we'd have birthday parties in school, his mom would pull him out that day. Um, and I always felt so bad for him because, like, he was a kid and, this is elementary school. He didn't know why, like, really. He wasn't, I felt like it always made him sad. And so I never like tried to like make him feel bad for it or anything. And I remember like we had a Christmas party, and my mom was putting together these little gift bags for the class, and I had the class list, and she was counting them all, and she was going to make one for him. And I was like, "Oh, you can't make one for him." And she was like, "Well, why?" And I was like, "Because he doesn't celebrate." And she thought I was just saying that because I just didn't like this kid. And she was like, "You can't be mean to him. Like, he gets one too, even if you don't like him." And I was like, "No, we're friends." I was like, "But he isn't allowed to celebrate holidays." And that's when she was like, "Oh, okay." She kind of figured it out then. But like, I
That
always
because you
felt,
were actually respecting his beliefs.
yeah.
And
And
the
I
kid
always
was just
felt,
like, yeah, let's just give him something.
yeah, because I didn't want to give him one because he had told me that, like, he had told me once that he had gotten something and his mom made him throw it, or his mom's boyfriend made him throw it away. And I didn't want him to get something at school that he was going to have to throw away. And so, like, I just didn't want him to feel bad at all. And I knew he wasn't going to be there. So I felt like it would be nicer to not do that to him, but I still always felt bad. But now he's married and has kids, and he's not Jehovah's Witness anymore. He left when he was like, I think like in high school or a little after high school is when his mom and her boyfriend ended up breaking up. And then he didn't have to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And so he like makes huge events out of his kids' birthdays and every holiday. And I mean, he buys them tons of stuff, anything that they want pretty much. And it's like he's taking all of that he missed out on and just like triples it for his kids because like
Living vicariously through the kids.
yeah, he doesn't want them to ever experience what he did growing up. And like, it makes me feel sad that, that he even had to begin with. But then, like, obviously it's something that it was that upsetting that he makes sure, like, he makes such an effort that his kids never feel that way.
Yeah.
But like, he was the only one I ever really knew. And I remember he would bring stuff to school that was like, I guess I really didn't really know what it was at the time, but I remember he would have like his own like stuff that he would be reading and everything that his parents would give him. And since I've made friends with some other ex-witnesses, like they've explained to me all about like the Watchtower and a lot of the I guess the propaganda that is given to children. And I like knowing about that stuff. I look back and I was like, I guarantee that's what he was doing. He had all that stuff. So that way it was just constantly being beaten into his head. But I guess, like me, he was able to get away, and now, he tries to make up for it with his own family.
I celebrate Christmas now. Obviously, I didn't when I was with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not so much, but my wife is very much into Christmas and holidays and stuff, and she just has a lot of fond childhood memories. So I do enjoy it, but sometimes it feels a little weird because it's not something I grew up with. So I'm not really good at picking out gifts because that's not something I was really used to. So sometimes I have to remind her, like, I didn't know what to get you because it's not something I had to do, buy presents for people as a kid.
Yeah.
I do enjoy putting up the tree and, the lights and stuff for the kids. And
Yeah, that's kind of how it is for me. Like, I like I like putting up a Christmas tree, and I like decorating it, not just because, it doesn't have any kind of a religious anything to me. It just makes me feel like the holidays are here. and
Yeah.
and my husband grew up in a very, very Christian home, and his grandpa is a pastor, and his family like never missed church. He was raised really hardcore in it, and even he's broken away from those just the standard extreme Christian beliefs of, you know, having somebody above you that you have to serve and this higher power. And because I don't know if it's just a normal thing or if it just happens to be the majority of us, but I feel like a lot of us, when we leave, like either like leaving the LDS church or even a lot of the ex witnesses I've met, I feel like we're almost all of us are like an atheist now. Where it's like that religion just got so beat into you that now it's like, at least for me, I mean, I don't have anything against it, but I just don't believe it.
Well, I've got different thoughts on religion and, spirituality. I don't think you have to go to a building or be part of an organization to, have a belief in God or be a spiritual person.
You could be someone who's really gung ho about reading the Bible every day, living a certain lifestyle, or just being a certain way. Just kind of reverence for spiritual things. So, like myself, I don't attend church. I tried looking one time. I got Google out and started going down the line, and it was just like, nah.
Yep.
Because nothing really fit. And I do pray some, but if you had to think of it this way, it's like 1 to 10, like 10 being super devout and 0 being not spiritual at all. I'm about a 1, so I'm a little bit. My focus on the channel that I have, it's been not so much telling people what I think the truth is, because honestly, I don't know what the truth is. I'm still figuring it out. I just know what the truth isn't. I'm trying to help people avoid getting involved in organizations that are going to hurt people. And I've been, talking to people like yourself and, hopefully working together to, warn people to get out of these organizations.
So that's what the Apostate Coalition has been about. It doesn't have to be just the ex-government community. It doesn't have to be the ex-Mormon community. It can be ex whatever. People have similar experiences with their cult cousins, basically. And we can work towards some sort of activism to help people get out of that or avoid it altogether. Are you like I hadn't really got a chance to speak with you before. Um, I figured this out, but are you active on the channels or some sort of?
Oh, your mic's cutting out.
Oh, can you hear me now? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll just try and talk loud. So, are you? Do you have any socials that you wanted to promote as far as activism is concerned?
um, like anything pertaining to like the church or just in general?
Well, most of the church. You can promote your other stuff too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm not really like big involved in any groups, for any like ex Mormons or anything. I mean, I would love to. Pretty much I just um if anybody ever has questions about it and stuff, I just try to like be more honest than I know that they will be or the missionaries will be. Um I just try to meet other people that maybe have left, and not just even the Mormon church either. Like, I've made a lot of friends that are ex Jehovah's Witnesses, and we talk a lot about the similarities and everything. And so it's just more about finding other people that got out and just talking about like what made us see the truth finally. But yeah, I mean, I would love to be more involved. I'm just not at this time. I don't really have a whole lot of groups or anything that I'm in. There really aren't a lot of Ex Mormon groups that I've been able to find anyway. I'm sure they're out there, but
Yeah, they're probably out there somewhere.
yeah.
I
I don't
don't
know
know.
any ex-Jehovah's Witness groups like, well, I know they exist, for like a region, but I'm just doing everything online at this point. You have participated in this sort of work just by being in this video and telling your story.
Yeah.
Of course, I know you from the Discord server, so if anybody is from the, X community would like to join our Discord server, it's Apostate Coalition. We're happy to get more people, involved. Even to just, to be an encouragement to one another. It doesn't always have to be about getting out there with signs and stuff. Sometimes it's just about being able to relate to somebody, it's just like, I know what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I've done. If anyone that I stayed in contact with, which has been about 5 people, I think, just when the one announced that he and his wife were leaving the church, I mean, I was so happy for him and, instantly sent him a message and just we talked for like off and on for a few days about it and just all the things that they had been questioning and things that I had questioned. A lot of it was the same. And a lot of the research we were finding was a lot of the same stuff. And it's all things that they do not want you to be looking at and they do not want you to know about. They don't want you to question. And it was just kind of interesting that, if you do start looking for your own answers, it seems like it really does open your eyes and shows you that they're not giving you those answers because they don't want you to know that stuff. And so when you finally start looking on your own, you might not necessarily like what you see or what you're finding, but at least you know that you're getting somewhere with the truth and it's not just their truth. And I know whenever they would do their big TV, their I can't remember what they would call them now. It was when they would show like the leader of the church. It was like when Hinckley was still in charge. I think he still is. I don't know now. But he would do this big talk and it was broadcast on like all these like different LDS events and they would tune into some special website or some channel at BYU and watch his big addresses that he would do. And I remember just being so confused and so lost. Like, what is even being talked about right now? And they would all just like drink it up. And I just never could understand like what was the point of that, except I feel like it was just more control. And that's really all these organizations that they all kind of have the same agenda. They're all trying to make money off of you, and the more they can control you, the more money they're going to make.
Money and power.
Yep. I mean, it's not to the point of Scientology, but I mean, a lot of the stuff, if you want to be deemed worthy in the Mormon church, you better be paying a lot of money to them. And that's really what it was always coming down to. It was, sticking to the rules and don't ever ask questions and pay your tithing every week. And if you weren't doing one of those 3 things, then you were the problem. And to me, that's not a religious, that's like if you believe in Christianity or not, whatever people believe in, that shouldn't be the way a religion is represented. It shouldn't always be just how much can we control you? What can we tell you to do that you're going to follow? How much judgment will you let us put down on you? and how much money can we make off of you in the process.
It should be, for the people. It should be a give and take. You should get something out of it, give something. Not sure what my point is.
Yeah. I never received any spiritual enlightenment while I was there, that's for sure.
No?
No, I never ever had any moment where I felt like, there were times that I was trying, but I never really felt like, I was receiving any blessings or that my life was in any way better because I was a member.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot better now that you're out.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you made it out, and I wish that everybody would get out of these groups.
Yeah.
The world would be a lot better place. I've really enjoyed talking with you and, appreciate you coming on the channel to tell your story. Did you, you can go ahead and tell me the other things that you do online. You said you do streaming online?
Yeah. So I stream video games on Twitch at Stationaryfork. I am also on YouTube at Killer Cutlery. And then I have a Discord that's also Killer Cutlery. And there's quite a few of us on there that we just all playing something, and we get on Discord and we play video games and stream it, and it's pretty fun.
And nobody judges you for playing video games.
Yeah. And actually, it's weird is how many of us are ex-Mormons and ex-witnesses that all get together in games. So we're kind of like the X group. We're the X-Men.
I'll have to check that out, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure I'll see you around on the Discord. And I guess we'll say goodbye for now. Thank you for watching, everybody that's been watching. And if you get an opportunity, please like and subscribe. And I'll put a link in the show notes for Stationaryfork's socials. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thank you for suffering my terrible overdub of the lost part of audio. You deserve a cookie.